places you could go if you had an idea. And now, of course, there are countless places and ever-evolving places. I mean, I think when we look at our business and what we do, fundamentally what we're interested in is finding very talented, gifted individuals who have something new and unique to say that cuts through, because there's so much content out there and there's so many opportunities to view it that you need to really foreground material that rises above the pack, that is really distinctive. And so the challenge for us as producers is to find creative talent who can really deliver that kind of material. And then once you've found that person, if you like, then the discussion is, well, so how do you want to express yourself? Do you want to do something that's long form, that lends itself to a kind of a long-running television series, or do you have a film idea, or indeed any other number of ideas that might kind of come off those? But it's very much starts with the creative talent and their ambition, and then with them you kind of plot the best way of exploiting those thoughts.
And are you finding that the talent is coming to you with a range of things that they want to do? Are they saying, oh no, it's all about movies, or are they interested in these other things?
Well, actually, I suppose our background is very much as film producers, so that the talent that we work with tends to be film talent. But actually, talented people are incredibly lively and open to possibilities. And so it's really a discussion, and also the way that we like to work is that we like to develop partnerships and relationships over time, so that you're saying to someone, well, this could be a movie, or this could be a television show, or this could be some interesting kind of hybrid, or whatever it is, something that might have a kind of a multi-platform existence. So you have very lively people who are kind of thinking about all sorts of different ways of expressing what they want to express.
Now, John, your company is obviously a little bit different to Ed's, but you're into, you own a lot of content because you're a publisher as well as a games developer, lots of different arms to the business. How do you approach turning a great story into something that can be pushed out there for audiences?
Right, so let me give you a little bit of background. So the company was originally formed around The Walking Dead, when that was sold as a TV show. So my two partners, Robert Kirkman and David Alpert, Robert wrote The Walking Dead and created that, and David was his manager. And when they created this company to exploit the rights around The Walking Dead, instead of calling it The Walking Dead Company or the Robert Kirkman Company, they decided to use that as a model and to exploit rights directly in all these areas, video games and all the things that you mentioned. And the way we think about it that's a little bit different is that we treat everything as a primary, and most people in the TV and film business think of sort of the primary as the TV show, and the video game, the merchandise, etc., are ancillaries or secondary opportunities. When you think about particularly interactive entertainment, where people could spend 8-10 times as much actual time in the experience, that it's very important that you treat all these things equally, let alone the sort of money-making opportunities across all these things. And then finally, one thing that we've done that's very unique is that we keep the actual creator at the center of this entire universe. So not just Robert Kirkman, who's very famous as a creator right now, but anybody we work with, no matter how we commercialize things, we don't do anything that creator doesn't want to do. Even if it's an awesome money-making opportunity, we'll keep them in full control of the creative vision of their...
So was Walking Dead was the template?
Walking Dead was the template, and instead of... So what typically happens in Hollywood is you would sell a show, and you would create a production company, and you would hire development professionals to read scripts and develop more shows. But instead, we've created one of the major independent comic publishing businesses in the world. We're sold in 60 or 70 some countries. We've got 20 or 30 comic books. We've got a book publishing partnership with Simon & Schuster, where we publish novels. We've got a huge merchandise and in business where we've actually brought in creators in that market. We have a social game called Super Fight, similar to Cards Against Humanity, where we've been able to establish that not only as a physical product that we sell, but it's in production as a game show. It's an online property with live streaming, and we've made a video game out of it. So that is our approach, is like a true 360 approach based on the creator connecting directly with the fan.
And it all started with Walking Dead. Can I just ask the audience by a show of hands, how many of you have seen or are aware of Walking Dead? I think that's pretty good. And I think we have a clip as well, which I'm told we're ready to play. Maybe we could run that clip.
The decision was made a long time ago. Sacrifice for each other. And love. To live. To fight for each other.
It's gonna be several months until we get any resolution, so let's make a drink.
Shit.
We're going to get AJ back.
So, lots of different IPs spun off an original idea there, right? But also, what's amazing is how many different ways and different media you can show a zombie having its head smashed in. That's it's very,
Very true. It's a very fertile creative opportunity.
there's gold and then there are hills.
That's right.
Now, Ed, you know, you're primarily in the film business. Just finished a TV show which is set in Ireland, sold to the UK. I wonder how, we touched on this at the beginning, how does the changed landscape affect the way that will be distributed? I mean, is that a straight TV deal or
Well, in the case of that show that you're referring to, was a show commissioned by a terrestrial broadcaster in Ireland called TV3, which is a small channel. The show is called Red Rock, and then sold to BBC, and then sold to Amazon in the States. So in a way, it's quite a traditional rolling out of a TV show, I suppose. You know, the fact that the fact that Amazon's a buyer is almost incidental. I mean, that's how film, TV shows are sold in the past, I think.
But does having Amazon as the, I mean, do they have the full international rights or just the US?
No, just the US.
Just the US.
Just the US.
So would you go out and sell it internationally on your own? How would
No, you work with a sales agent
Right.
who sells it on your behalf. But one of the things that's sort of been a staple of the UK scene is that the kind of terrestrial broadcasters there in the UK, BBC, ITV, Channel 4, less so Sky, but become kind of shareholder financiers in television series that are then, that then enjoy investment from US cable broadcasters, or indeed Netflix or Amazon. And one of the big changes I think we're going to see over the coming period is that Netflix and Amazon in particular don't want to share the kind of territorial rights with other entities.
They want global rights.
Exactly, they want global rights. So you're gonna see that there's more pressure being put on the UK broadcasters for those bigger shows, because actually they don't really have the wherewithal to produce like things like The Crown out of the UK, because those shows are so expensive. So they won't be shareholders, not that they are at the moment in The Crown in particular, but in those bigger budget things it's going to be.
But does that have any impact on sort of diversity of storytelling? If you think about what local producers want to do in their own markets, if Amazon swoop in and buy the whole thing, does that change the way people start looking at the sorts of stories people are trying to tell?
I think in a weird way it might actually lead to more diverse programming, because if you're at the BBC now and you're looking to make a bigger budget show that appeals across the world, there's an argument that maybe it doesn't appeal as concentrated a manner as it might to the local audience. So you may find that actually that you kind of have a situation where the Netflixes, Amazons, Apples, whoever they may be, are doing the bigger budget shows that will work internationally, and that the UK terrestrial broadcasters are actually going to look at the domestic market and think, but what shows can we make for this market that are really going to punch through?
Right.
Because I think what you're seeing in this new media landscape, and I think you're seeing it everywhere, is that in the old days it was about the mass market. It was about the movie that was in the cinema for all shows for a week, or it was like about what was on BBC or ITV or the American terrestrial channels. Now what you're seeing is a fragmenting of that audience, obviously, so that you have kind of multiple niches, and the mass is actually crumbling. I mean, the mass is still there for older audiences, for audiences that aren't kind of digital natives and that don't find it as easy to consume in different ways. So that the television audience is an older audience. It's still a very powerful audience for advertisers. It's still a very vital audience right across the world, the terrestrial thing. But as time goes by, that will become less and less important, because as we all get older and we watch Netflix, etc., we're going to rely less and less on the kind of just switching on the television and sitting back.
So that market's evolving rapidly, and obviously your movie business you've been in for several years, and great critical success with Room, The Lobster, and you have a new movie out, The Last Sacred Deer, and I think we have a clip of that which maybe we can roll now.
This is a bit of shameless promotion.
We'll have to do it, yeah.
This film is in the cinemas in the US, the UK, and going out around the world at the moment. So.
Thank you.
Well, do we have the clip? Maybe we don't. Maybe we do.
Good afternoon, you must be Martin.
That's right. These flowers are for you.
Thank you very much, Martin. I love roses.
The kids' rooms are amazing. So big and bright. I love this neighborhood. So quiet, clean, beautiful.
Where do you live, Martin?
We live in a not so nice neighborhood in a not so nice house.
What a charming boy. How did his father die?
A surgeon never kills a patient. An anesthesiologist can kill a patient, but a surgeon never can.
We don't have to worry about nothing, 'cause we got the fire and we're burning one hell of something. They're gonna see us from outer space.
I'm really sorry about
outer
Bob.
space.
It's nothing serious.
No, it is.
Like all the stars of the human race, human race.
Where did you two go?
When the lights started out, they don't know what they heard. Strike the match, play it loud.
He's got issues. Serious psychological issues.
Can you do something to put an end to all of
The
this?
sky, 'cause we got the fire.
Don't be scared, Mom. You'll see. You won't be able to move either. So get used to it.
Where is she? What did you do to her?
I don't understand why I should have to pay the price, why my children should have to pay the price.
This is the only thing I can think of as close to justice.
So they can put it out, out.
Wow. Look at that.
Go and see it, please.
Is it still a market? There obviously is, because you've got this many, but is it harder to finance stories like this, movies like this, in an era when the big studio, there's so much concentration around franchises and science fiction and movies based on toy characters and things like that?
I mean, the answer is no, actually. I mean, it would be overstating it to say that you're kind of seeing a polarization in cinema, but in a weird way you are. I mean, we run theatres in Ireland, which are art house theatres, I guess. And I think in a way they're quite different to the multiplexes. The audiences are different. One is a kind of appeals to, broadly speaking, a younger demographic, and it's about the tentpole movies, the Marvel movies, etc., etc. The other is, I guess, a kind of a more grown-up audience. It's audiences that are over 35. And in terms of I guess movies that are called specialty in the US. But in terms of financing those films, it's actually, there is a very vibrant market for those films. And there's a kind of dual economy for actors as well. In other words, you'll get actors like Colin and Nicole or whoever it might be, we'll do the big franchise movies, they enjoy doing that. But they'll also do these smaller movies, where the payday is less, frankly, but there's a different engagement with the filmmaking. And audiences really do want to see these. And it's also, when you see what's happening on with Netflix, we're announcing 80 new movies. What they're announcing is a whole bunch of new movies, both the kind of bigger tentpole movies, Scorsese's doing a new movie for them with a budget of, $120 million, but they'll also be looking for the kind of intelligent, director-driven, cast-driven, smaller budget films. So those opportunities are very much there. And audiences will still go and see these films.
Yeah. John, again, different dynamic, but how much of an advantage is it to you to own the content, to own the IP, that you then develop into new forms of programming, new forms of entertainment?
Well, it's a huge advantage because you can spend years and years seeing how the audience reacts, supports, and changes things. So with a graphic novel, it comes out every month. So The Walking Dead started in something like 2001 or 2002. Our next most successful title, which is called Invincible, has been about the same vintage. It's now in development, at Amazon as a TV show and with Universal as a movie, and our ability to sort of control all of those rights and everything around it, but is a great business opportunity, but more importantly, it allows a writer to understand the universe and the characters over a very long period of time before taking it elsewhere.
Does that mean you have creators and talent coming to you and saying, well, we want to plug ourselves into your
right,
system?
so I think that is the advantage of saying, number one, we're going to give you creative control, and number two, we cut our creators in on all of the business opportunities.
Right, so they get a share in the upside.
A really good share in the upside. And our goal is every creator has some special thing that's important to them, but they often hold that back. They show you number 2, 3, number 5. We've tried to set up an ecosystem where they want to show us number 1 because they're going to have both that creative and financial opportunity.
Sorry, just to jump in, but although our businesses are quite different in one way, there's a huge similarity and there's a commonality, which is exactly around what you're talking about there, which is putting creative talent at the very center of what you're doing. And there was an old saying that, content is king, but actually I think in the new world, creative talent is king. If you are someone who really has something to say and can be at the very center of how it's said and exploited, you're in a really powerful position, and I think that's how the future is going to shape.
So does this mean does it change the way you get to the talent? That's kind of what I'm interested in. There are people out there.
So we look at it, for example, as a writer-driven world now, that there's such a supply of TV, film, books, whatever, that previously the writer was, this guy that
somewhat down the
line from the director, the actors, this or that. But in creating real franchises, it's the writer who brings that to life.
Yeah, great. Well, look, there's a red light flashing, but the writer being at the top of the trees, music to my ears. Guys, thanks very much for joining me.
Thank you.
Very interesting.
Thank you.
Great.
Well done.